Two.
Silly. Farting around with friends.
Fart
With friends.
Welcome to Mom's Art 2. It's Miss Brooke and I here joining us.
Hello.
Is one of the most talented women we know. She is living currently in Panama. She is originally from Canada. She is a singer-songwriter, a composer. She dances. She's all around lovely and has multiple children. So she balances it all. So please welcome Miss Wynter Rosen.
Wynter Rosen's in the house.
How you doing, Mommy?
Thank you so much. That is quite the introduction.
Oh, yeah. All right. So tell us a little bit about how you're doing tonight. What is happening in your world this evening?
Right now, I have a house full of teenagers downstairs in Ezra, my son's tattoo studio, and they are just having a lot of fun. It's really awesome to see them all gathering there in that space, especially after going through such a long COVID period where nobody could get together. And my eldest son, who's here from Canada, is going through his Pokemon cards, which he's completely addicted to. And I have just been having a very nice night getting prepared for my awesome interview with you two.
Woohoo!
Hey.
Lovely. Well, we've known you a long time, long time. I mean,
Yeah.
I met you in probably 2010 when I first moved to Panama. And Mel, I mean, you met her around that time, right?
I think I actually met her through you. I was not in any mommy groups. I did not have children at the time.
That is correct.
Oh, I met you through Jesse.
Oh, Jesse Schoberg. That's right.
And we had a night at the casino.
Holy mother. That's right. That was our first meeting. We were at a casino in Panama, which was, what's it called? Not Hotel Panama. It was the other one. Anyway,
Yeah.
if you go there and you like the ladies, that's the place to go.
And we did. We had our night there. We hung out. We had dinner first.
We had dinner and drank so much alcohol that I didn't remember just now how I met you for the very first time. But it was immediate love. I can tell you
It was.
Yes.
It
same
was.
here.
And I was a little bit nervous too, because I remember the Schoberg saying, "Oh my God, she's this amazing actress," and I remember I was like very nervous, and it was great, and that was the very beginning. Yeah,
That's right. So tell us a little bit about just where you're from. We know you're not from Panama. You're not from the States. God bless you.
yeah. I'm from Toronto, Canada, born and raised.
On the playground is where you spent most of your days?
Maxing and relaxing and staying all cool.
Shooting
Out
some
playing
b-ball
b-ball out by the pool. Sorry, that's a really bad American TV show, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air,
I just threw my phone.
that we have problems. Now that we're in the same room, Brooke and I, we have
It's about to
issues
go.
with.
It's about to go.
Okay. All right. So Toronto, Canada.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how you were brought up and your history back then.
Oh, wow. Well, I was brought up, all of my aunts and uncles on my dad's side of the family were musicians and dancers. And my dad was a trombone player and played in many bands. And my uncle Sonny was a conductor of the Philharmonic Orchestra. So I grew up with a lot of music and art in my life, always singing in the house. And my mom was just a beautiful, wonderful, also like great painting and art. And I grew up in that kind of environment for the first part of my life. And then, as you get older and your parents, I grew up with a very interesting father. My dad was one of the last survivors of Alcatraz.
Oh my.
And yeah. And, he was a bank robber. And he
What is happening? I thought we were going to
Yes,
talk about your music.
No, it's
We're through the music, Wynter. We are going here tonight. Moms are too. We're talking about daddy's a bank robber. Go get it.
It's true. It's true. And you know, the funny thing is we probably never had this conversation before, because for most of my life, it was something I didn't talk about. It was like, you know, when in my teens, when my dad was in and out of jail after the whole Alcatraz thing, which was before he met my mom, and me growing up in a very, you know, there was a lot of uncles and aunts in my house. I was really raised not to talk about anything, so I didn't. And then I was ashamed about it. And I really felt like that was a big reflection on who I was. And it took me a lot of years to overcome that and understand the benefits that I got from that lifestyle, that it wasn't shameful, and that anything that I did in my life in survival mode was okay. And how was I going to take all of those situations and put them towards my parenting on what never to do,
right?
And what to do, and what to do. So, you know, when my dad went to jail, you know, many times before I was born, but when I was old enough to understand, my life changed drastically. So that, you know, position I was in with family and singing and my aunts and uncles, my real aunts and uncles, by the time I was 13 years old, you know, I was thinking about how to quit school and live on my own after running away from home several times. So that was my upbringing, really, in a nutshell.
Well, and you had a really interesting entrepreneurial spirit about you, even at an early age. I remember having conversations with you about, didn't you start making jewelry, or what was your first endeavor as a craftswoman?
Right.
Well, my dad was an antique dealer. You know, he flew all over the world doing things, but the whole sort of cover of it was antiques. And he had an antique store, and they would go into the mall, you know, and set up like big antique shows. And when I was very young and my dad went to jail, I said to my mom, why don't we see if there's some sort of show that we could do in the mall, because the money was great. And I remember saying, why don't we make jewelry? Do you remember when that big, very huge, chunky fashion jewelry became so popular? Mm-hmm. So I went to the bead store and I got tons and tons of beads and everything. And I started to make a bunch of necklaces and bought a bunch that were already done for almost no money. And my mom and I booked into a mall and, you know, just set it up with pictures and magazines. And we sold out, man. I had like such a great business from that and doing that at a super young age. And, you know, I was always I wanted to make money, because most of the time I wanted to get out of the house. So I was like, what am I going to do? And, you know, when I was a teenager and my dad went to jail, we went from living in like a very beautiful home with everything to having nothing, because all the money had been spent on lawyers and whatever had transpired. And so I moved my mom into this little tiny shack of a house. And my mission from that moment on was, how do I make enough money to get out of here? And so I did everything, you know, but that was my first taste of, oh my gosh, I've got my own little business here. In that little shack of a house, it was a big piece of property. And I decided, you know, I'm going to throw some parties. So I got a bunch of the guys from the football team. This is, I think, like in grade 9 or 10. And I got cases, you know, we arranged cases of beer, a flatbed truck, and a band, the high school band. And I charged $10 to park your car and to get onto my property. And that party, I mean, 1,000 kids from school must have shown up. It was unbelievable. Like, it was so crazy. The police station was at the end of my kind of field. So at that time, I went to the police station and I told them I'm going to have a little party. And I have researched out, like, if there was going to be bonfires, where the hoses need to go. So I did everything so I couldn't get in trouble.
You are a trip. I am cracking up right now because that's crazy. Like, yeah, well, I'm going to go tell, okay, I'm a freshman in high school and I'm having a huge party in high school. Can you just tell me exactly where the fire codes are for the bonfire?
I was worried about having boobs. And you were like negotiating with the local police.
I was so calculated. I was like, what could go wrong and how do I prevent it? Because I went to the, remember the drive-in movie theater?
Oh yeah.
I went to the drive-in movie theater with invitations and just handed them to every teenager. Like, all of a sudden, no, there was 1,000 people there. And I knew there was going to be a lot of people there and I didn't want it to get shut down. So when I, kind of set it up, like, what could they tell me? I said no bottles, so there couldn't be any broken glass. It was cans only. And at that time, I don't know if you can still return your empties and get money, but the next morning, after I was counting, like, my $10 cash for each person at the door, I had another $2,500 worth of empties.
You're crazy.
And returned all of those empties and, with friends and everybody, like, everyone was just having such a good time. It wasn't like anyone charged me. They just wanted beer and food. And so I had that party 3 years in a row. Everyone was just waiting for, the annual party until the 4th year, the police came and they were like, no more parties.
My God, that's incredible.
But that was like my high school money. That was really fun.
She's like, it lasted me the whole year.
Yeah. Until next year. This is a really good example of your entrepreneurial spirit where you, obviously it's just ingrained in you, part of your being, which is really admirable. And we look up to that for certain.
Absolutely.
So when you were in that place of thinking as an entrepreneur and learning how to make money and stuff, what was your next step into adulthood? Tell us a little bit about Mr. Malachi, which is your firstborn son, and how that was being so young, having a kid, and with that entrepreneurial spirit, how did you balance that?
Oh my gosh. Like, that was such a journey. Well, first of all, when I had Malachi, I met his dad. It was at a nightclub called the Gasworks, which was a really very popular, iconic rock and roll bar where, like, the Sex Pistols had played and big bands would go. The Gasworks was iconic. And now by that point, I was making a lot of money. I had, so my dad, I was living in this little house with my mom. I was having the parties. I started to get older. My dad got out of jail. He came back to the house. Things were really rough. And I started stripping. I quit school. I started stripping. Now, at that time, it was a very different world. There was no table dancing. There was no hooking. And I really made a very big point because I saw so many things in that world that I kind of also wanted to educate people on, because I met so many great girls. I got a really big understanding of why girls go into the world of stripping. It's not like you just go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be a stripper. It's not like that.
No.
And
sometimes, but yes,
sometimes, but it's very, very rare. For me, it was like, I need to get my mom out of this situation. I need to buy a house. What am I going to do? And so I went into that full force. And
how old were you? Do you think?
What's that?
How old were you when you started?
I was underage.
Okay.
and got away with it. So I guess I was 18 going on 19.
Okay.
And I became a feature dancer right away. And I was actually so nervous about it, but I knew I had to do something. Like the situation at home was very bad and there was no money left. And my mom was suffering. And I went into the most busy bar called the $1 Million Saloon, the most high-end strip bar. And I went in and I
that sounds like it. Yeah. The $1 Million Saloon. That sounds like the high end. Go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
And I went in really in the back of my mind of going, okay, I wonder if I could do this. Like, can I do this? It was very hard for me. And I went in and I said I would like a waitressing job. And the manager of the dancers looked at me and he said, oh my God, like I will start you off as a showgirl dancer right away at $2,000 a week.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. And at that time, you didn't even get fully naked and nobody could touch you. And it was shows and the girls were beautiful and it was a very different world, but still, it was still taking off your clothes and I was scared to death. So I went and I told him, okay, that's great. That's what I need. So he drove me for 2 weeks. I went to outside of Toronto to a little town called Hamilton. I told my parents I was going to get trained to be like a bartender. It wasn't surprising to them that I was underage because I always looked older. I always behaved older. And anyway, they must have, smelled something in the air because the second week I was in Hamilton.
Yeah, they did.
That took me a minute. I'm not quick today.
They must have the energy must have been in the air because the second week that I was in Hamilton dancing, I came out on stage and my mom and dad were in the audience.
Holy mother.
What?
And father.
Yeah. It was really brutal. It was really brutal.
Did they like follow you there or something?
Yeah. They knew where it was. And because I told
out?
them where I was going to be, but I told them that I was, waitressing and learning to bartend, but they knew. And
were they there with roses like opening night?
No.
Did your dad have a wad of ones?
Yeah.
What's that?
Did your dad have a wad of ones?
To at least support you.
Well, they might have been there just to see her as a server, but then while he was there,
go ahead
and get in on it.
They knew. And I think they came to see what it was all about because I think they also knew they couldn't tell me anything. I had survived so much and I had no respect for my father at that time. So it wouldn't have mattered what he told me, even though I was, he was a scary guy. I still was like, I'm not listening to you, because I didn't have any respect because of what had happened, which that dynamic changed a lot as I got older. But basically, they wanted to see what I was doing. They wanted to see the environment that I was in. My dad went outside. It was the first time I ever saw him cry.
I was going to say, yeah, they saw what you were doing. Oh, they saw it.
My dad left and he took me outside and he really was so defeated, and I didn't understand it so much at the time, but I think for a parent to know that your child needs to resort to a lifestyle that is not ideal, because it's not, made him feel like he was such a failure and had really failed me. And I understood that. And, and he just told me, if you ever do drugs and if you don't save your money, I'm going to break your fucking neck. That was his words to me. And then they left.
Inspiring.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that our next warm up before we go on stage together, that'll be our announcement to you.
And let me tell you something. At 21 years old, I bought my first house in cash for my mom.
Get out of here.
Yeah. I made $100,000. I bought the house. And the following, 6 months later, the real estate market in Canada went through the roof. and I sold that house and I bought another one and I flipped it. And that was really how I started making my money. I went to Miss New World. I won it out of 350 girls in Indiana. And my price for dancing went up to $6,000 a week.
I'm from Indiana.
Oh my God.
Did you see her dance?
What year was it?
Miss New World.
Miss New World was there. I mean, it was the place. Girls from all over the world flew there for this, you know, it was Playboy and Penthouse and the magazines and everybody. And if you won that or you did well in that, as you know, being in the world of exotic dancing, it was a big thing.
I need to know. Look, I had a lot of friends who danced, lots. And I was in that world partially. So I totally get it. So yeah, I was just like, I'm even more awestruck by you.
Aww.
So that was my story up until I met Danny. And when I met Danny, and you know, my mom had her house, I had my cars, like I was in a great position. I met Danny, I fell in love with this, you know, punk rock, singing, dynamic, unbelievable talent, like so much dynamic, I can't even tell you, guy, but who was as goth and as punk rock as you can imagine. And I was like the girl in white, and we were so opposite. And I fell very, very madly in love with him. And within that year, got pregnant with Malachi. And I stopped dancing. And, you know, I look back now and, you know, I've maintained a great relationship with Malachi's dad. No matter what happened in that relationship, it was very important to me that Malachi had a stable mom and dad, and that I never, you know, told him anything about his dad, which was that he was a heroin addict, got back into heroin, you know, when I was pregnant. It was just something he couldn't handle and left. And I didn't know about drugs like that. You know, I really was not my world. So I wouldn't have known at that time somebody on heroin, if, you know, standing in front of my face, which I do now know. And so obviously that was not somebody that I could stay with and raise a child, but tried to support him in every way that I could. And I never told Malachi when I was seeing dad's away working or if he was in rehab, you know, until Malachi got old enough to realize that his dad wasn't around, and said to me, you know, Mom, it doesn't matter how often somebody works, they can always make a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I got in touch with Danny and said, now it's time for you to have your talk. Like, he's old enough now, he needs to know the history. And that was how Malachi really found out about his dad's problems and issues. And so that was a whole other crazy chapter.
Is he still with us, Danny?
He is, and he is clean, and he's been clean for a long time.
That's incredible.
We're very close friends, you know, and
is he still in Canada?
He's still in Canada. He was never with anybody else. He never remarried. He never, you know, had a partner, which is too bad. But he spent so many years of his life a mess, you know?
Yeah.
And
it's probably nice to just be with himself for a long time when you don't feel like you like yourself or know yourself. And then all of a sudden you're clean and you're like, shit, I got to spend time with me.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Well, he had a really rough life. And when Malachi was very angry, because he got really, really angry at one point, and I told him, listen, you know, you can be angry. You can scream it out. You can't be angry at me. I'm not here for you to take it out on, but I will listen to you, because he would backlash a little bit. And then I told him, listen, you need to get it together, man. You have never had a life like your dad did. You have never walked in his shoes. You know, his own father was incredibly abusive to him. His stepfather killed himself in front of him. And I said to Malachi, all you know is that you have had two parents with a lot of love. And even though it might not have been your perfect situation, Stop being so judgmental. You know, you were loved to the best way you could. Get it together, get over your anger, move on, and find forgiveness. Because if you decide to stay angry, you're just going to grow up and be an angry person. You know, find your relationship with your dad, find the way to communicate. He certainly never meant to be a deadbeat dad. You know, he never meant to be. So
nobody ever does.
Nobody ever does. And he's trying to do the work. And, you know, you can't imagine what it's like to be a heroin addict, like, you know, that kind of thing. So he's doing the best job he can.
Before we move on to where you are now and all of your work and how you balance and all that stuff, I want to ask because I want to know, and I don't know if we're going to put this in the show or not, but I feel like it's really informative. What were the signs that you saw that you say, now I know what someone looks like with a heroin addiction? What are those things that you see?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, one of the things that happened was, you know, Malachi would sometimes go for weekends with his dad. And his dad had a new girlfriend and was also a heroin addict. And one morning, or no, it was later in the night, I was calling, like I always did. He just didn't live far from me. I was calling, and I thought that it was very weird that nobody was answering. They weren't answering. And I just got like my alarms. And I was like, okay. Anyway, very early in the morning, I called again. Like this was later at night. And I was like, okay, well, you know, maybe they're asleep. I don't know. But something got me, like first thing in the morning, I went there, which is not normally something that I would do. And when I got there, Malachi answered the door and all the windows, blinds and everything were closed. And he was playing his video games. And I was like, where's Dad? Where's Renee? And they were still sleeping. And I was like, something is not right. Like, that's not right. And I packed up Malachi and we left. And then, you know, you can just see signs in someone's eyes. And I don't know how to say it. It's like, you know, when someone smokes a joint, you know, when they're high, like you just know it. And heroin, if you're a functioning heroin user, you can really hide it well. Mm-hmm. And Danny really hid it well. But when it started to get really bad, there's a lot of weight loss. And, you know, things would go missing from my house. And one day he showed up with his girlfriend an hour and a half late at Malachi's birthday party. This is so bad. So I was like, had met a new school mom. And you know me, like I'm not like such a school mom, but I really wanted Malachi to have some friends. So I was having his birthday like at a play center. And I met this new school mom. She was like very preppy. And, you know, I was like, oh, I got a new friend, school mom. And Malachi's dad and the girlfriend were like an hour late. I was like, where are they? Like, what is going on? And all of a sudden, I look out the window and I see Danny and his girlfriend walking. And honest to God, I was like, oh, like I gasped because first of all, they were decked out head to toe in black leather. And you have to know Danny was like full goth, but they looked like such skeletons. They had obviously been doing so much heroin. They were so skinny. And they were an hour and a half late and they were completely strung out. And I panicked. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I looked around and they came in and this mother, if you could have seen her face, she didn't know what had hit her, what had gone on. I was mortified. I never heard from her again. Like that was it. Never heard from her again. And
that's horrible.
Yeah, those are the women we don't want to hang out with.
Mm-hmm. It was so crazy. And a week after that, his girlfriend overdosed and was hospitalized. She survived, but it was like that. It was like that. Heroin is a nasty drug, man.
I had close people be very affected by it and lost their life as well. And like it is a very sad and a very strong addiction. It is a very strong addiction, and it can come back it can come back to haunt you decades later. Like, I don't know that ever really just dissipates, right? I feel like it's always a fight for someone who has been addicted, even clean, for many years, right? I think it's like one of those drugs they still struggle with.
It's like alcohol too. I mean, listen, alcohol is the worst drug of all, and it's legal. You know, you see alcoholics and oof, that's a tough one. And it's, you know, it's not considered to be as bad as heroin, I guess, because it is legal, but it's bad. It can be really
sugar
bad.
is more addicting than marijuana. There's no addictive quality to marijuana. Sugar is extremely addictive, but you know, it's in everything. So what do we know?
Well, nowadays though, there's really good support systems for alcohol as well. If you seek it out, even online, there's doctors that are on call. There's like, it's just not that no one should struggle with it because it's awful, but it's more socially acceptable to be, obviously because it's legal, struggling with addiction with alcohol. But my brother died of heroin overdose.
I didn't realize that was what it was.
Yeah.
It's a really tough thing, and it's very, very hard for the people around. You know, it's not just about the person that's suffering with the addiction, but everybody in their life is so affected. You know,
and Malachi and he have a nice relationship now. Are they in contact? Do they have a relationship?
Yeah, they're in contact all the time. And Malachi is, you know, the one thing that I really want to stress, like I talk about this a lot. I really see what an amazing man Malachi is today, you know, and he's always been, because he never had to listen to the putting down of the parent, not from me, not from Danny. And I see such a difference in children that don't have to deal with separating parents or divorcing parents that are putting the kid in the middle like the ping pong ball. It changes the kid's entire life and security. And because, you know, I am kind of this mom that a lot of the kids confide in, of my teenage, and it was like that also with Malachi, because I just was that mom. And I love to talk to the kids, and I love to educate through my experiences, you know, of what's worked if I'm asked. And that is just something, when I see all of the kids, the difference in the parents that are together and happy, the parents that have separated and have not badmouthed each other, and then the parents that put the kids in the middle of a war.
I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about this new thing that we found. It is called Moonlite. It's amazing. We're still reading to our kids at night, and I can be honest with you, sometimes it's tedious because we're reading the same book over and over and over and over. Well, let me tell you, Moonlite is incredible. The magic of Moonlite is simple. It's the experience of reading together with a projection on the wall, because tablets, yes, are a staple for many families, and digital books can be overstimulating sometimes for little kids, and honestly, they leave little room for imagination. But Moonlite bridges the gap between traditional and digital books. There are playful projections, vivid sound effects, and read-along features make this multi-sensory storytime a delight. Moonlite is here to help you create imagination-filled, interactive bedtimes for your whole family and make storytime magical again. Use the code Moonlight10 with our link to get an extra 10% off your purchase. It's very cool. How long do you think that was when you had Malachi, you were going? Where were you in those years where it flipped and you went, fuck this, I'm doing it, I'm making the change? How many years do you think you were balancing all of those jobs until you made the switch?
Well, I was always working towards something. I just didn't know what it was. I knew that I didn't want to be waitressing, and I didn't want to be go-go dancing, and I didn't want to be bartending. I knew that I wanted to have something, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So it was sort of like, if I have to do something that I don't really want to do or love to do, what am I going to take from that experience to make it worthwhile so that I'm not wasting my time? So what did I do? I learned how to make every kind of drink as fast as I could, and I made it as fun as I could. And I just thought, there's something out there for me. So how am I going to save money? Because being a single mom, paying for a place to live, now by this time, I had sold my houses. I had gone through a lot of money with Malachi's dad. And because I got out of the world of stripping, which I was making so much money, going into the real world, making almost nothing, that was like a big adjustment, and the money just sort of went very, very fast. And I found myself living from paycheck to paycheck because, I also paid for everything with Danny. Like, the money was just, everything. So I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew, okay, I've got this job bartending. So every single penny that I make from my tips from this job gets banked. And when I would work late, I would go to the bank machine every night, no matter if it was 4 a.m, and I would deposit my tips. From my waitressing job, I paid my bills. And if I got a really smashing tip, which I did because it was a very expensive restaurant, and I had some customers there where sometimes I got like a $500 tip. It was like from the wheel. That, boom, in that bank account for save. This for bills, this for pleasure. And I did that for 3 or 4 years until I managed to save up $20,000. And then and now by this time I had met Julian. He was only 21 years old. He started helping me, babysitting. He was babysitting Malachi when Malachi was like 1.5. And it was so cute because he was so young. And one day I said to him, I need to take a trip. I'm going to go see my girlfriend in Whistler. I'm going to go to the mountains, and I just need to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? I'm sure the answers will come, because like so many things in my life, I've been very fortunate with that answers coming to me in some way. So I'll never forget, I was walking through the mountains. It was beautiful. I didn't know anybody. I was by myself. My girlfriend was not with me. And I found this little tiny store. And it was one of those paint your own pottery stores, way ahead of its time, way before any of those stores had opened. I had no idea what it was. And I went in, and it was so tiny. And I saw this pottery, and I was like, well, what is this? And she said, it's paint your own pottery store. You want to paint something? So I took a teapot, and how you get set up. She showed me what to do. And it was, you just get lost in this world. And I was sitting in this beautiful little shop in the mountains with the snow falling. And then I heard her on the phone. And she was, maybe she was like 30. And she was beautiful. And she was in the store, and she was the owner. And she was like, yeah, so we're all going to meet at the store. We're going to have some wine. We're going to paint pottery. Then we'll go for dinner. And as soon as she said that, I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, that was just like, I'm going to do this. And I started asking her about franchising and questions, and asking her how much she enjoyed it. She was like, I love it. I make really great money. It's my first little store. Yeah, I guess I could franchise. Anyway, I was so excited. I didn't know anything about pottery, but I knew how I felt in that moment of painting that. And I was like, this is where you go. It's like how I feel in the recording studio. Now you just go into another world. And I got back to my girlfriends, and I was like, I need to leave. I got on the plane the next morning. I got home. I told Julian, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to open a paint your own pottery store. But because I was also an artist and I love to paint, I figured I can paint my own stuff. Maybe I can sell it. Mm-hmm. He said, well, you don't know anything about pottery. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. So the next day I opened up the big, huge yellow pages under ceramics, and I see this sign that says Dodic Design. and I call it, and this girl answers, and I say, do you sell greenware? Like, I started doing some which is the pottery before it's actually in the kiln the first time.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, do you sell greenware, and do you sell pottery? And she said, no, I don't, but I'm actually a store, and I sell all my own pieces of Judaica. But I can tell you where to get this stuff. I'm happy to give you my supplier. And I said, well, that would be amazing, because my idea is to open a paint your own pottery store, but I also want to paint my own pieces. And she said, well, I'm actually ready to sell my business, and I want to go to Vancouver. Maybe you'd be interested in coming and meeting me and buying it. And what? I was like, I went there the next day. Her business was $15,000. It came with 4 months of training. I bought all of her designs on the menorahs and the Seder plates and everything. And she trained me. And I took over her business and I bought it. And that was how my first business came about. And I called it The Marvelous Mess. And it was the first paint your own pottery store in Canada. And I had lineups down the street on my first day of opening the door that within a month, I moved to a bigger location up the street, and became very well known for the original pieces that she was designing. But I took those pieces and my own pieces to a New York gift show at the Javits Center a year and a half later, and found a booth, and my business became a very big wholesale business of Judaica. It grew to 470 countries that carry Wynter Rosen designs. And from that, I opened 3 stores. One was called Sugar Pants. One was The Marvelous Mess. One was Wynter Rosen Designs. And Sugar Pants was the store I opened to give Malachi a job. So I put in an ice cream parlor, and it became like a co-op with an art gallery. And my rent was very little. By this time, I was making chandeliers, wholesaling them. And when I had the pottery store, it was my way of having my little child with me all the time, because I had a fun space for him. So that was how I got out of the world of stripping, bartending, and that life, and became, you know, a designer. And my designing world started from that. Like Wynter Rosen Designs was home interiors and the furniture, and the Sugar Pants was the co-op, and the Marvelous Mess was the paint your own.
One thing I really like what you said though too, because I can relate, is even in that time when you knew you had a bigger picture for yourself, you weren't sure what that picture was. However, in the moment while you were socking back cash, you were going to make the best drink. And you were going to be joyful in that moment.
That's right.
And you were going to, even though it wasn't your ideal situation, you were still going to be joyful and in the process, while still having that I'm waiting for my greatness, right? And it will come, and I'm going to do everything and be happy and grateful up until that point. And trusting that, exactly, trusting your instinct. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. There's like extra components. It's not only just being grateful or just being cautious and stocking money away or just listening to your intuition, but it's also all of those things combined, being grateful. You know,
and that's what they say about us going into the industry, especially out here or where you are. You know, you're starting in Panama, where there isn't necessarily that your industry, but you're creating it. But they say, oh, everybody, you need luck, you need everything to be lined up. And really what you need is hard work, because that's either how you make the money or allow yourself to do what you're supposed to do. You need good timing, which is your intuition, and listening to yourself and making sure that you're jumping at every chance you possibly can that feels right. Not every chance, but everything that feels right. And then you also need the luck. And the luck is that phone call that you made in the moment and went, this is something that I love. You talked to her and it came out that I'm selling. So all of those 3 things have to line up, but it is the joyfulness in making the money and making sure that you're putting that good energy out there. Because they tell people moving out here all the time, everybody wants to be an actor. Everybody wants to be this. There's so many people. And it's like, yeah, but there's like 30 people who are putting it out there on the regular. And we all have to cheer each other on to make sure that we're doing it, because it's hard when you're a mom to remember all of those components.
Yeah. And listen, you know, everybody wants to be Beyonce, but nobody's willing to do the work. So it's, you know, when I started dancing, I remember saying, if I need to put myself in this shit world to get out of a situation, I'm going to be the highest paid dancer there is.
That's right.
And I was up there with the 5 highest paid dancers that there ever was, without compromising myself to do it. You know, there was a few, and I remember the number 1 dancer. Oh, she was so stunning and so sweet. And she was making about $10,000 a week at the time, the highest paid dancer. She was the first Canadian girl to ever do a magazine, Penthouse magazine, and she was so beautiful. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to do what she's doing. You know, like if I have to do this, I'm going to do what she's doing, and I'm going to work really, really hard. And you know, when you say like everybody, that the amount of actors and everything, the reason there's so few people that actually make it is because nobody's willing to do whatever it takes. You know, at that time, I would have swept up a floor. Nothing was beneath me to get to where I needed to go. I didn't want to do it, but I would have done it. There was nothing in my vocabulary that I ever said, I'm too tired, I can't do it.
But I just need to interject this, because yes, you're absolutely right. But I don't want our listeners to confuse whatever it takes with blowing anybody, because no.
Right. No.
But B, B, doing anything it takes, but not knowing your worth. Because doing what it takes and understanding that what it takes isn't taking any small commercial that only pays a tiny little bit to become a big commercial star. It doesn't mean taking those gigs that don't pay anything. It means I know my worth, and I'm going to take everything that I can, and I'm going to do what it takes, knowing my worth. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I mean. You know, doing whatever it takes doesn't mean necessarily on the outside. It means I had to do for myself. And you know this in my Rocky Horror Picture Show, in my singing. You know, I was not an actress. I did that play because I never was like, I didn't do musical theater. Wasn't even really singing when I started in Frantic Ballerinas. I loved to sing. I had no experience, you know, other than on the street and doing little things. I was never vocally trained. And when I did Macrofest, that first show as Frantic Ballerinas, I was like shaking, and I sucked, you know, but I had to work really, really hard to get to where I was and know my worth and know what I could do. But I also knew what I had to do to get there.
Well, because when we met you, you were a mom of these 2 boys. They were little at the time. Malachi was, I think, still here, or it's here in Panama. I'm still talking about it.
No, I don't think Malachi was in Panama.
Oh, maybe he wasn't.
He might have been, because he was back and forth, and then he did end up living here for 3 years. So I'm not sure.
Incredibly artistic, and you were helping out with Malumbo? No, Mariposa.
Malumbo too.
Yeah, that's the Malumbo.
The orphanage you were helping out, which killed me. But so you did so much good work in Panama, but you weren't doing anything musically or artistically or on stage or whatever. So what was the transition for you from moving to Panama, being a mom and giving so much of yourself into what Brooke was talking about?
Well, when I moved to Panama, I had been so busy in Canada at that time. And it was really important to me. When I decided to hug Ezra and Ozzy, I said to Julian, I really would like to not work so much. Like, I want to sell my businesses. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I've never had that luxury to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to enjoy those kids. I never had that opportunity with Malachi because I worked so much. And so before we came to Panama, I sold the businesses. And I really enjoyed my pregnancy with Ezra. Like, you know, I was still working, but I didn't have like all the stores anymore. I was still wholesaling things. I could work at my own pace. And then we decided to move away, and I was like retiring. I was like, I am retiring. Thank you so much. And And so we moved to Panama, and I did the pool. I did the kid thing. I made friends. But I really wanted to find my place in the culture and in the community, because I thought that was very important for me, not to just to have expat friends. And I loved Panama so instantly. It's such a beautiful place to live. So I wanted to get involved in something. And Brittany, our close friend, Brittany DeVries, took me to the Malumbo orphanage. And she said, well, maybe you'd like to do some volunteering at the orphanage. This was maybe like a year after I had moved here. And then I was like, I really need to do something. You know, like the retirement thing idea lasted a few months. That was it. I was done. So I went to the orphanage, and to cut a very long story short, created a group of women, friends, because I saw that it was very much in need. There was a lot of babies that weren't getting picked up, a lot of supplies that they didn't have. So I made a deal with Sister Lourdes that if I could keep women coming daily, would they allow us to pick the babies up out of the crib? Because what happens when a baby is left, which is what was happening, because they didn't want the babies to cry. There was one girl and 30 babies. So nobody can touch the babies. Otherwise, you have crying babies all night. And this is called learned helplessness. And it's a horrible thing to grow up with. You can't attach to people. You know, babies need to have that. So that was what broke my heart.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And there was not a lot of supplies. So, you know, the babies had bad diaper rashes. And so I told her, look, if I can figure out a way to have women come every day and get you diapers and baby wipes, will you allow me and my team to take the babies out of the crib, play with them, put them to bed, and do all of that stuff? And she told me yes. So I put the Hot Mamas chat, a chat we've had for years, and everybody volunteered. And Besitos de Mariposa, Butterfly Kisses, evolved from that and is still going strong today. And we, you know, the whole orphanage is a different orphanage today, because there's lots of help and there's lots of hands. And it's been wonderful. Like right up till, you know, we did the song, Navidad in Panama, Christmas in Panama, and those streams, like that money goes towards the orphanage. And people go, and El Rey, the supermarkets here, have donated and allowed us to go in every Christmas and do gigantic drives where people buy the food and the diapers and take truckloads of it. And right before COVID, that Christmas, we sang at Rod Carew Stadium for 55,000 people, and 30 of the kids from Malumbo, the teens, came down in busloads. And El Rey, I mean, I think they raised over $100,000 worth of stuff for the kids. Every El Rey donated. It was wonderful.
That's incredible.
One of my El Rey experiences, because I went and I was asking for donations, and I remember I was with Bliss, and my Spanish is very present tense. It's not it's not intelligent Spanish. You know what I mean?
Pretty
like
Spanish.
Yeah, it's something else. But it was definitely, I can remember I was like, I'm doing this for the kids. And I went in there and I was like, I don't understand what anyone's saying to me. Talk to us about how now you have, you know, your 3 boys, you're living in Panama at this point. You and Julian moved to Panama because he's an artist as well. Art is just swirling through your life. And you guys moved down there. And yes, after you participated in the musical Rocky Horror that Melanie directed, you went on with some folks that you met and like started a group. So talk about that.
It was Noelia, Carmen, myself, another guy named Beto, and Ezekiel. And we did this Canadian Thanksgiving dinner, and it was so much fun. We rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. We sang, we had a great time. So much so that when we were done, we just didn't want to separate at all. And so I said to the girls, like, what do you want to do? Like, how do we keep doing this? And they were like, I don't know. And I was like, well, I don't know. Do you want to make a band? Like, just have a fun band. And they were like, yeah. And that was how Ezra and the Frantic Ballerinas evolved. And Ezekiel sang with us back then too. And we had big tulle skirts. We were like punk rock, pop, folk, flowers, tulle, crazy band with songs like Fuck That Shit and I Want to Kiss You When I Come and, you know, Lesbian Manicure and Fabulously Gay. And that band grew with the, you know, with the LGBT crowd and the gay crowd and every crowd and the artsy crowd and the theater crowd. And it was something so different. And before I knew it, this thing that was just like a hobby for fun for us to stay together became like opening, you know, doing Chanel, doing Tommy Hilfiger, until we ended up opening for Il Divo in the ruins of Panama for like, I don't know, 3,000 people. And I'll never forget going on that stage thinking, how did this happen?
I'll tell you how it happened, because you're a hustler, Wynter. And wasn't just like, oh, we did these little songs and out of nowhere, everyone knew who we were. You hustle.
Yeah.
You are on the phone. You are putting events together. You have goodie bags for the events. You are marketing and advertising, and you are calling folks like, you are calling Chanel. You are calling Tommy Hilfiger. And this is, you know, why, and one of the many reasons why I absolutely adore you is because I am absolutely inspired by your tenacity to go for what you want. And it's something where I am just a little stagnant in, you know, I stay in my comfort zone and it's not getting me anywhere. And as to why Melanie and I have been pushing each other to do exactly what we're doing right now. And not just to inspire others, but also to inspire ourselves along the way. And to be honest with you, your hustle has always been something that I've admired. And you are the reason. And yes, the girls are wonderful singers too, but the way that you go about getting what you want is pretty phenomenal. So let's not like just be like, I don't know how it happened.
It just we know how it happened. But you know what's cool is that one of the things that you're really good at is before El Divo and before the big concert that you guys had a while ago that you were like, we suck, da 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 da. What happened is you went, I love doing this. I'm going to be good at this. Yeah. It may not be right this second, but I am going to be good at this because I'm going to make sure I'm good at this. I'm going to book these things. I'm going to at least make sure that if I have these small end goals, a concert, a Thanksgiving, a whatever it is, I'm going to be ready for that. And so it gave you these deadlines that made you rehearse harder, call in coaches, make sure you were writing every day. When you had that pressure, because you made the phone call, you were the one that called and said, I'm going to fucking book this. Oh shit, now it's booked. Who's going to fucking come in and help me get ready? And I'm going to have to get ready. I'm going to have to make sure everybody has goodie bags. I'm going to make sure the costumes are ready. I'm going to make sure that my house is ready, to make sure all the girls have their tool everywhere they need to be.
What costume designer am I getting? What's the best makeup artist? Like, you guys have an entourage.
You put that deadline on you so that you could say, I'm going to make this happen by making sure it happens, and not just sitting back going, but I'm doing all the hard work because I'm good at my talent. Why isn't anybody noticing me?
No, you put your talent into action. And because of that, probably, you know, like you said, the first time you were on stage, you were shaking. What the hell am I doing here? You know, but you faced your fears and you went through it. And because you did that, look at all that you continue to reap all of those things. And I think that it's just admirable as mothers too, when we're trying to juggle everything and we feel like we can't do it and we're in our comfort zone, that we just need to take that step of faith, right? That leap of faith. Yeah.
It's easy to say, I'm fine. It's fine. We're fine. It's fine. I'm, you know, auditioning, or I'm doing this, or I have this on my plate. It's fine. I'm tired. 8:30 bedtime. When you really know that tomorrow you'll feel way more fulfilled if you do that extra hour and a half of writing, of
yeah,
rehearsing, of setting up your space, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And also, you know, I have always been the kind of person that really likes to go against the odds. You know, like if I'm told I can't do something and why it won't work, I'm never going to listen to that, because I'll tell you, we always have our $1 million idea. And how many of us have left doing our $1 million idea because somebody has told us why it's not going to work? And, you know, with the music business, I started that in my 40s. And I was always told, what is she doing? You're never going to get a deal. You can't do this. Nobody does this past 19, 20, 21 years old. And that made me even more determined, because I thought I couldn't do this when I was 19, 20. I was too busy trying to get my mom into a different position and then being a single mom. So why shouldn't I live my dream now? Why should I not do it because you're telling me you can't do it? So I started to understand why a record company would give you a deal in your 1920, because they're putting money into a 25-year project. So maybe I can't get a record deal, but I can get a publishing deal. And if my song is good enough, I can get a publishing deal. And if my material is good enough, and I learned to sing in Spanish, and I was calling the Spanglish in Frantic Ballerinas way before this exploded and became so popular now. We were doing that, and I would call my Canadian record people and say, you should listen to our songs in Spanglish. This is going to be a big thing. And they would laugh at me. And I would be like, I'm telling you, and now look at what Spanglish is. The Frantic Ballerinas, we were one of the first. And I have really researched this out. And there was not a lot of bands doing Spanglish, and no females. You know, maybe like Selena way back in the day, I'm not even sure, but.
Or Shakira, maybe a little Shakira.
Shakira, and maybe, you know, a few, but not very many. And
the groups for sure. Even recently, there was just on SNL for the very first time, very first time, somebody singing in Spanish. Both songs.
Bad Bunny, yeah.
Both songs in Spanish. And I was like, fucking finally.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, for any woman that thinks she is past her point of doing something new, reinventing herself, living a dream. You guys have always done this. But, you know, a lot of women write to me and they say, you really inspired me. Like my husband left me. My kid, you know, I gave up everything to raise my kids, and now I don't know what to do with myself, and I'm super depressed. What did you do? And I'm not different than anybody else. I just did it. You know, I got out of my comfort zone. I think consistently learning is going to always keep you young. And really knowing, don't listen to what anyone says when they tell you you can't do something, not ever in your life, because you can. And we get turned off of doing things. So don't tell people what you're going to do. Just do it. You know, and like if you're coming out with a new product or a business idea, or a baby name, don't tell anybody until you can't change your mind, because people will, for some reason, always go to the negative of it can't be done or it's been done before. And if I hadn't listened to those people, I would never be doing what I'm doing today. And I thought, I'm not going to care about my age. I'm going to get up there with my 20-somethings. I'm going to sing. I know that the songs are great. I know what I can learn to do. I found the best teachers, you guys, you know, really like, you know, I had a lot of help on that journey that weren't easy on me. I'll never forget the day you told me, when you on stage, when you're too worried about being pretty, get your ugly on, you know, and I was like,
sorry.
right, I'm so self-conscious. Yeah. And I, you know, listened and it took a lot of work to get there, and a lot of people laughing at me, you know, being like, oh, what does she think she's doing? And, you know, I'll tell you something, when I got on that stage singing the song that I wrote for my mom, rest her soul, God bless her soul. And I sang Monica's song with opening for Il Divo in the Ruins of Panama. I thought, who's laughing now? You know, I did what and after that, shortly after that, we got signed by
baby.
She's got the chills.
But it's like that. So I want to say to every woman out there, don't think you have expired. Don't ever think you've expired. This is the most important thing. And don't be afraid to fail.